Hello, this is Jim Sporer with the International Society of Service Innovation Professionals. Today, it's my pleasure to be talking with Steve Vargo. Steve, as you know, is an ISSIP Fellow, and he's also the father of Service Dominant Logic. And we were just having a nice little discussion about some new things that Steve has started working on. And I think they broadly fit under the category of T-shaped and inserting systems thinking, transdisciplinarity, very, very hard spanning multiple disciplines. So Steve, could you maybe share with the ISSIP community a little bit of your thinking on this topic?
Well, some of it really isn't all that new because where service dominant logic came from was very transdisciplinary, though initially it was the subdisciplines of marketing, informed by some of the other disciplines from service and some philosophy, particularly Bastiat that we've talked about before. But it was transdisciplinary in a sense, and it was trying to make sense of some commonalities that Bob and Lusch and I had thought were there, that converged on maybe a direction and a message, which turns out to be service dominant logic. And I've just continually broadened that scope. Bob and I extended the scope beyond marketing to the rest of the business disciplines, and then that's been slowly expanded to include other things. And so I'm again kind of zooming out and on literatures and disciplines and saying, how can I think transdisciplinary in a useful way to come up with some common understanding? So the ones that are bothering me at the moment are the divide between the natural and social systems. That there can't really be a divide. There's nothing more natural than a social system or a human system, and we're all part of the same systems. So how do we understand all of that a little bit better, and then maybe we can think intelligently about some things like sustainability instead of just politically about those issues. So I'm kind of struggling with that one. That's just the difference in living and physical, or human and natural, and trying to figure out how to approach that. Well, one of the ways that I've started doing things with papers that I write, where I'm trying to bring in several literatures, is building reconciliation tables. So I'll take each of the major research streams or major literatures that address a topic in a certain way, and set up a table, and then the left-hand side, the columns are the key concepts. What are the key terms, and how are those terms different but talking about the same thing in the other literatures? And the goal of that is to identify the best overall framework, the one that's the most general, that's the most encompassing for dealing with the phenomenon, and reconciling the other concepts with it. And if I can do that, then I can let the different literatures talk to each other, because now we've got a common language for doing that one. And so you pick the best framework. Not surprisingly, I tend to find the best one is service dominant logic, but it's not necessary. You can pick any one. And reconcile, but in the process of doing that, you also find that there are cells that are blank, that the concept isn't talked about, but needs to be talked about perhaps. And so you can use that insight to fill the cells, particularly of the organizing framework. What do we need to be able to talk about that isn't built in already? So, but it can go in both directions. So examples of that recently have been the concept of emergence, which almost doesn't exist in the literature of marketing and business, except casually the emergence of something, but it really is an informal kind of thing. But emergence has a real formal meaning in some of the sciences, and a real important presence in what we do in business. So how can we use the other literatures to inform some framework so that we can bring emergence in and use it and think about it and maybe move everything ahead. Find some going the other way. I think about the concept of cognition, which we tend to only assign pretty much to humans, though we'll talk about some lower level cognition in some of the other animal species, but pretty much only us humans are privileged enough to have real cognition, which is just silly. And so there's something going, there's a generalizable something going on that we call cognition that you should also find in weather systems. And so I'm beginning to find that's adaptation, that it's the self-adjustment of self-adjusting systems is cognition. And that's not coming from me, that's coming from the systems thinker. But we haven't thought about that. And so I'm just trying to get some of this stuff reconciled so I can think a little bit more broadly about real issues, and some of those have to do with the profitability of companies, and some of them have to do with the sustainability of the overall system, and including humans. So you can kind of pick your level that you want to deal with it, but you've got to have a language and an understanding, and you've got to get it down to a basic set of concepts that you can cart around with you.
Yeah.
And you can't do that by creating Frankenstein monsters by pulling concepts from everywhere. So that's the stuff that I've been playing around with lately.
Fantastic.
We were talking a moment ago, and I said, I guess in some ways it's kind of T-shaped thinking. I'm trying to think both broadly.
It is.
What's the broad framework for thinking about this overall system, how systems work, and then can I connect those with the specific literatures that let me drill down on specific parts of it. So that's kind of what I'm shooting for. Some of that's been done, of course, with complexity theory. They've gone along, the Santa Fe Institute has gone a long way towards building bridges across scientific disciplines, and I'm just a huge fan of that work. But you still find there's some things that, if I try to find a good study of institutions, which we sort of hold out as a human thing, I can't find that in much of the complexity work. You know what? It's there. We probably just call it structure or something similar, but those bridges need to be built so that we can understand what in one system it's called structure, and another is called memory, and another is called institution. And maybe we then can benefit from what we know about each of those disciplines. So that's really what I'm working on.
That's fantastic, Steve. Thanks so much for taking some time to share your thoughts with us. And I'll stop the recording now. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.